All right, welcome back, everybody. We're doing Books of Doom. And why are we doing this? The easy answer. Doomsday's coming out. You guys need to learn about Dr. Doom's origin. Is it the same Dr. Doom origin as this one? Definitely not. Whatever we're doing in Doomsday, I have no idea, bro. And honestly, we'll see what the movie does. We'll see what the movie does. But this is 6 issues long. Pretty good size run. But this goes over Dr. Doom's origin all the way from his past as a child all the way up to future day where he is now. We'll probably see a couple of Dr. Doom's series stuff going on recently in this channel. Hopefully we'll do Secret Wars a little bit later this year too. But yeah, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for all of that. Leave any other suggestions below, any other characters you want to go over, runs you want to go over. Let's hop in. We start with Doom talking to somebody. It is said that memories do not form in a child until they are past their earliest years, but this has never been true for me. No, Victor Von Doom remembers all. Every moment of this life, which has tried so hard yet failed to break me, every loss, every sacrifice, every vengeance taken by these hands. I could not forget them if I tried. Father never believed me, but I swore that my awareness began in my mother's womb. Perhaps it was the demons mother was dallying with that made this possible. Perhaps it was their touch that opened my mind too clearly and too early. But regardless, while the father couldn't believe my stories, mother never doubted me for a moment. Dr. Doom is a mother's boy, mother's child. Definitely a mommy's boy. We'll see more of that later. Mom's loving arms, how I live for her embrace as all boys do. If I only could have known why her hands were always so cold. And if you don't know, his mother was a witch, so those demons that he talks about with his mother dabbling with could be real demons. As we see with her in the forest of Latveria, it was only years later after it was much too late for her, too late for father, too late for the entire world, that I would learn about her demons. A child of 3 cannot be expected to understand such things, of course. I only knew that my dear, sweet mother, who smiled at me with such love, also carried a dark shadow in her eyes, and that her hands were always as cold as ice. Father knew, though, that she was dabbling with the black arts, and he feared it with her heart, saying to her, "Think of your family. Why are you doing all this?" And she responds with, I'm looking at everything. Look at all of us. I'm thinking of our family. Our people are constantly in tatters, barely one step ahead of the Baron's persecution. But if we had some power, Victor's life, it could be better than all of this. As he pleads, not that kind of power. These people are chased down by the king and the Baron of Latveria, but she decides that she wants to take powers into her own hands. Father was right. Mother did not understand the sacrifices her desires would demand, nor that the power she sought would be beyond her capabilities to control. So one night, her spells brought disaster to us all. Manipulated by a demon, she was suddenly filled with a thirst for vengeance on Baron's men. The soldiers who kept our little gypsy band on the run, who beat us and stole our earnings when they could, who done worse to our women. And so she did a ritual and went down there. I could only hear of her actions that night, only later, and only through whispers in the dark, but it was said that she killed many soldiers, and at the same time, that the demon who allowed the power to do so took the life of every child in the village as payment. So her mom killed all these people, and to get the power to do so, killed the firstborn of everybody in the village, besides her own son, basically. And so they all freaking hated her and chased her out, calling her Gypsy Witch, where they murdered her. And of course, Doom's father was the only person to find her, looking for a tearful goodbye. The final whispered words he would never share with me. And it reveals that the father went dark after all that. Not evil, but just stayed away from Doom and didn't talk to him very much. And with that, they interview a man from the Gypsy clan that was friends with the father and is like, yeah, Boris told me what the final words were about. They were about young Victor, begging and warning her husband to keep him from dark places, kind of implying that he would become evil after all of this, the terrible things he would do. And he brings up a big moment was her funeral that kind of overshowed why she said this. We buried mother on an unmarked grave in a hill in just the hours after dawn. The camp was on the move, trying to get everyone packed up on the road before the Baron's men found out what happened in the nearby village. No one spoke, but their faces said more than enough. They were scared for their lives. And then they looked at my father, their leader, their friend, their healer, the man who just lost the love of his life, and blamed him, which is fair, honestly. Your mom did or not your mom, your wife did terrible things, and you are the only one that really did suffer besides her death. Yeah, sorry, boss, you're pretty bad. And so they come up to Boris and basically say, hey, man, what happened was pretty bad, but I think we should part ways, seemingly breaking him up from the group, not letting him be the leader anymore. And Boris is like, yeah, are you guys sure? We're on the run for our lives. There's no other time that we should all unite together to get free, to save the day. And of course, the people understandably are like, yeah, but you're a witch. Your wife was a witch. Like, that's terrible, man. And Doom, hearing all this, is like, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My father and mother loved these people. These people were our families, and they were going to cast us out? They're calling my mother names right over her grave. I was just a boy. I did not understand. Not long past my 4th birthday, but I understood enough. I understood that this was wrong. So I spoke up, looking at them and saying, hey, shut up. And Doom seemingly is like, yeah, at that age, I was far beyond any normal 4-year-old. I was an intelligent being. I was able, without much effort, to persuade them to see the light, as it were. Father and I were not turned away. And so the person interviewing Dr. Doom says, what did you tell them? Because I forgot to mention, this is an interview for Dr. Doom of his origin story. He's telling this to somebody. So take all of this with a tiny grain of salt. Some of it maybe he fabricated just to look better. Some of it is real, etc. But this is the best that we're going to get. But he decides not to tell them what they said. But the man that is getting interviewed in the jail cell is like, I'll tell you what he said, because I'll never forget it. But he chilled us to the bone right away. And young Victor says, all of you, you say my mother was a witch, that she brought doom upon you all. Well, if you cast us out, I swear to you, I will grow up and be exactly like her. And when I'm truly my mother's son, I will track you all down, and the darkness that she brought will be nothing compared to what I do to you. What an absurd sentence. What a crazy thing to say. This 4-year-old's like, yeah, my mom's a witch. I'm going to become a witch too, the equivalent of a witch, and I'm going to kill all of you if you do not let us stay in your group. And the man goes on he meant it. Like, he meant every word. That group frightened all of us, frightened by a child. Of course, we knew that this was already his mother's child, but we never spoke of it again, not within his earshot. Yeah, spooky kid. Doing this shit since 4 years old is crazy. For the few years after that, we traveled always on the move, father with his quiet grief and me simply behind him. We rarely spoke of mother, and when we did, we never spoke of the magics or what she'd done. I suppose his hope is that as I grew older, I'd forget everything but her loving smile, that I'd lose myself in the happiness of childhood and our travels. As I said, father always underestimated my memory, but though I never forgot, I did stop dwelling on her loss, as did he. And the years passed, our gypsy life did become a happy one. Of course, most of the other children kept their distance from me after my mother's death. Most, but not all. Meeting with another girl very prominent in his life is Valeria, with them basically being childhood best friends and kind of lovers. And if you don't know this, this is the woman that Dr. Doom names Valeria Richards after. Not Dr. Doom's kid. Reed Richards' second born, his daughter. But yeah, growing up, they had a really good bond. As they're playing in the river, throwing water at each other, it's like, Victor Von Doom will get his revenge. No one dunks Doom and lives to tell the tale. Ha ha ha. Valeria was the only friend I needed, the only one who really knew how to make me smile. When I was 11 years old, the only thing I wanted from the world was to grow up and marry her. A simple life seems to a child, even to one like me. And how quickly you can be reminded of life's true nature. Returning to the village, Boris is going to go help the Baron's wife. She is sick, sent a man for his healer. It's okay, Victor. I'll return. I'll save the Baroness, and then they'll leave our people be. And Doom is upset and is like, we have to help. Why are we helping the Baron? His men, they're evil people. They're killers. They pick on us all the time. This is nothing. They care nothing for us, for gypsies. And then nightfall comes and Doom reveals that, yeah, he was right. By nightfall the next day, father had returned with disaster at his heels. As the father comes back, he's like, Doom, we gotta go. I couldn't save her, Victor. Her body was already riddled with cancer, but the Baron, he means to blame me for the death. I stole away this morning and rode all day. The Baron's men aren't far behind us. We must ride for our lives. But where would we go? Our tribe was camped at the foot of the Liberian Alps, so the mountains were the only path, and those passes were treacherous even in this weather. But this was the end of autumn, and so what was treacherous would be deadly the higher we would climb. Our horse fled on the second day, perhaps feeling the rain turn to ice scared her off. Or perhaps she simply had enough that we were damned. Yeah, they're just running away, just left their people behind in the dust, essentially. The people are safe. They really are just blaming Doom's dad. In 4 days we hid, watching the Baron's men on the lower passes search for us. They, with their full stomachs and warm coats, we were freezing. So in this, it was either a waiting game, and I'm sure that they would win. They had all the supplies. We had literally nothing. Knowing that they would lose, his dad is like, oh, you're freezing, my son, and warms him up in his coat, seemingly saving Victor instead of saving himself. He says they will give up soon enough. And so they hide behind some rocks with Dr. Doom in a warm coat and his father just in a regular shirt. Father was right. They did give up, but not soon enough. The next morning I woke up and my father's arms around me. There was something different this time. His grip was cold as ice, and I couldn't make him let me free. His father died, protecting Victor Von Doom, keeping him warm. And so with that, Doom lost both of his parents at a very young age. Very traumatic things to happen. Running for survival, hiding in village camps because he's a gypsy. I have no idea how much time passed that morning. Locked in my father's slow death grip, I stopped screaming and struggling, and at some point, I resigned to my own death, which was surely not far from me. He gave up, but father's cold embrace brought my thoughts back to mother and my mother's hands. At once I understood. I knew that some cold is cold. It burns you to your core, and I knew my mother's true fate. She died in the service of a demon, and it was with demons that her soul would reside in eternal torment. Basically saying, I realized my mother's in hell. And so while sitting there, his friends in the village found him. Sometime after that, the others found us. The next days are unclear. I remember that my father was not yet dead. I remember him whispering halting last words. The Baron men taking his body away to present to their master, and I remember being angry, as I was when mother had died, except this time my anger had become cold. Cold like mother's hands, cold like death, cold like the world. Victor is seeing the reality of the world. And one of the people from his camp are like, yeah, after his father's death, Victor was very different. He was never the nicest of the boys, but he and Valeria were close. Yet even after that day, he pushed her away. She even came up to me crying because she doesn't understand why Victor is suffering so alone and doesn't want any help. And we see what the camp thinks of him is they're like, yeah, well, you don't want to help that guy. He's marked by the devil. He's the equivalent of like the weird kid of the group. I mean, his mom's a witch. He seemingly comes from her. His father died already. He's got a troubled life. Please do not go back to him. Of course, this was before we all knew that Victor had found his mother's strongbox among his father's things. From that point on, his fate was sealed. Mother's effects were a revelation. I had never forgotten her or that she had danced with demons, but to actually see her spell books, to realize I was blessed with the same talent that she was, I knew then that my destiny was to save Mother, to rescue her from hellish torment. I would enter the Netherrealms and find her at any cost. But as the years passed, years where the black arts brought me no success, I slowly turned to science. And this is a very important thing in Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom, by the way, is a sorcerer. Very powerful sorcerer. Almost as good as Doctor Strange. He could be the Sorcerer Supreme if he really wanted to. And he has multiple times. But his use of science along with that and different contraptions, brilliant. That's why he's so powerful. He's a genius on top of that. In my innocence, I thought to combine science and magic, forcing the black arts to follow my rules, not their own. I was a prodigy at sorcery, then I cannot express how quickly I mastered science. And through this mastery in all things I created, I was able to help our people in the ways my mother had always sought to. We see some of his inventions turning the Baron's people into ice. I was able to make the Baron's men run from us in fear. By the time I was 16 years old, I was the leader of the clan. My intellect far outstripped those around me. so it was only a natural progression. Only Valeria did I see as approaching as an equal because of our childhood love. Yet we had grown apart, and when she looked at me, I only saw sadness in her eyes. What more she feel? I suppose she didn't understand my destiny. She didn't understand that everything I'd done, all the inventions and displays of powers, they were only a digression along my true path. My ever frustrating attempts to reach the nether realms to find my mother. All the things I taught myself that had been with that goal in mind. Vengeance on the Baron's men was simply an afterthought to years on the run from these same vicious men. For when I looked at these soldiers, I thought about Father's final embrace and my mother's fatal mistakes, and what drove me to save my mother. Drove me also to punish the people who forced her to seek counsel from the damned in the first place. But this vengeance was almost like a game. Our people striking a blow against the oppressor and then running for the hills. But one night, that all changed. I'd gone walking in the night breeze, walking off the frustration of yet another failed attempt to reach my mother, and in the black mood, I lost track of time and place until I'd ventured too close to the route of the wide patrol, and now one of the Baron's men would make me pay with my life. As a man walks up with a gun on a horse and is like, "Hey, you're a gypsy," I'd left in such a foul mood that I had brought none of my inventions with me that night. Thus, I had no means to save myself with a fool with a gun. The man aiming the rifle at him is like, "Oh, you're Doom. The Baron's reward on your head will have me a castle of my own." And Doom says nothing but just attacks the man. No one means to save me. The cold fire. And he grabs this dude's neck and starts choking him out on the floor. As Doom stands above him, it's like it takes far longer to strangle a man than I'd imagined. I kept my hands locked around this throat for several minutes, after the thought struggling just to be certain. And I looked into his eyes to see if there's any change from living to death, until I saw nothing. Inside, though, I felt the cold vanish as I looked down at this poor fool. My hands began to shake, and I suddenly felt the horror of what I've done. For a child, for one last time, I turned and ran away, thinking this is what she must have felt like that night. This one traumatized him because this is the first time he officially took somebody's life, and he did it with his own two hands, and he's like, I am my mother's son. I am evil. My hands are still shaking until I woke the next day. The dead soldier's pathetic face stared at me whenever I closed my eyes. He was traumatized by this. It was appalling. How could I fall victim to such plague of guilt and anxiety? I resigned to block it out of my thoughts. My family's blood was now on their hands, and now their blood was on mine, so the scales were beginning to balance. Why could my shaking hands not understand that? So the action of doing it is what traumatized him. He's trying to think of it in his brain as a justification, saying like, they killed my mom, I killed one of theirs, we should be free. But no. As another man comes up, Boris is saying, "Hey, somebody is here to see you from the United States." This man walks up, and apparently from his achievements here in Latveria, his science, his technology made its way to America. Of course, my achievements had become so legendary that this general had come all the way to track me down, apparently with some fear that his enemies would find me first. There was offers of monies and opportunity to study in the finest schools and laboratories in the world. On any other day, I might have struck a harder bargain, made them a higher price for my participation, but on this day, with my hands, I wanted to be away from Latveria. And so he makes the deal and says, "When can we leave?" So I escaped to America, where I would lose everything. So that's the first chapter of the Books of Doom done. Thank you for listening, watching, and enjoying. We'll see more of this. Peace out.